Thank you for waking up early and sacrificing your sleep and time to put up with me for the next 1 hour. And thanks for having me back at GSEC. Okay, without much further ado, let me get the talk started. So this talk is titled "The CISO's Dilemma," and it was actually a dilemma to figure out what to talk about it. So I thought, let me just recap, since I've had many years in the industry, let me recap my own learnings. And this time I'm here to tell you a story of stuff I've learned by standing on the shoulders of giants. I'd formally like to thank Dr. Igor Podebrad of Commerzbank, Kelly White, formerly of Zans Bank and now of Risk Recon, Anup Sethi, formerly of British Telecom, Shah, formerly of CRISIL, and my friend Thomas Dulin, for their thoughts, which I am going to regurgitate in this talk. Basically, I went around asking them, how do you solve this problem? Like, I have worked as an InfoSec vendor for many years with some of the finest InfoSec teams in the world. And 3 of them have been led by Igor, Kelly, and Anup. And they've led the team for several years, done some excellent work. So I had the privilege of learning from them, both as a vendor and as a friend. And then I just called them up and asked them hey, can I get your thoughts and can I quote you on it? And all of them said yes. So my story kind of begins where it ends. And it began in this lovely little city of Singapore, where me and Thomas gave 2 keynotes once upon a time at Black Hat Asia in 2017. These 2 keynotes kind of changed our thinking for the worse. We both ended up being very depressed in thoughts after the keynotes. Okay, we've now enumerated the problem and we don't see a solution in sight. So despair sets in. But then you give despair some time and eventually something works out. So that's where I'm going to present my learnings. First, we'll begin with Thomas's whole thesis in his keynote called "Why We're Not Building a Defendable Internet." And he enumerated the problem spot on. Basically, we're bringing the wrong army to fight the battle that is in front of us. Because attacks are a technical problem created by a few really skilled individuals. Defense is trying to take a live octopus, put him through a can of Pringles while talking about quantum dynamics on Wednesday. This was not my quote. I stole it from the guy who did the Prince of Persia speed through, from where I've taken the screenshots. Smart guy, fast and plays Prince. Anyways, so if you're bringing technical solutions to a political problem, that's not going to compute. And my note, which was titled "The 7 Axioms of Security," basically began by asking the following question: who are you most scared of? And this was a slide from my talk. Who are you most scared of? Attackers or auditors? This is the first dilemma that every CISO faces. And you got to make your decisions. You can't just ignore this question. Because if you ignore this question, what's going to happen is what I call the CISO Mobius strip, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. But pick which battle you want to fight on. This is the dilemma that got me thinking about how can a CISO work on defending the enterprise. So yes, I did enumerate several measures on what it takes to make the switch from a reactive mindset in InfoSec to a more proactive mindset in InfoSec. And I spewed out some things called 7 axioms of security, because you got to make your talk title cool. And you really can't fit more than 7 things in a single slide or a single brain. Yes, there's a, but how do you put that into practice? So far, what we really see is basically typically a journey of a CISO today can be best characterized by a Mobius strip. The average diameter strip is about 18 months. And this journey happens, it begins rather pleasantly. We'll goes and basically when you're trying to walk into a new CISO job, life's great. I mean, this tweet was from a few days ago, which basically said that what required about 600K last year in annual salaries now requires 2.5 million. I mean, that's a staggering number, but do keep in mind this news is brought to you by Bloomberg, the same people who brought you the super micro implant shit. So take it with a stack of salt and a half. Anyway, it's a good journey. You start off new in an organization, build up your visibility, gain importance, basically what your predecessor did. And grow in size, grow in power. Eventually, you'll get this beautiful thing they call budgets. And budgets give you money. And money means that you have to spend it, else you're going to lose the budget for next year. So you go to whatever the next Gartner Magic Quadrant is, go buy a metric shit ton of products with questionable value, and then you're into like full Rasta mode. Your life is now set. You're at the captain of the defense ship. Everything in your life is three primary colors: high, medium, and low. Your whole world revolves around it. You can't see any color. You can't even see a color called blue. So I've talked to CISOs. They've gone colorblind. The whole game is fought in dashboards and in snakes and ladders type thingies where your daily job is to figure out how to de-escalate a high vulnerability to a medium and a medium to a low. And this cyclic process will never ever end. But you're doing defense because you're doing bloody hard work. You know, it takes time looking at all these dashboards and clicking things up and down. And then like some donkey comes up and posts a cross-site scripting bug, and then like, oh shit, this is not a really bug. Well, truth be told, cross-site scripting bugs are not really bugs anyway. I agree on that part. But suddenly you discover that life's not really a beach anymore. You know, things happen. You take a turn into the dungeons, and suddenly all these things come out. Like, hey, wait, where did these come from? I had all these products with the blinking lights, and what the fuck are these things doing? So, but you know what? You start questioning. This is the beginning of your next dilemma. Like, wait, how did I get here? Ooh, this was not supposed to happen. But you really don't have time to think about this because things are coming at you from all directions. And suddenly, the whole high, medium, and low world is crumbling around you, just like the towers in Inception, and you really don't know what's going on. Eventually, what happens is team members start dropping out, they look for different jobs, regulators tighten their grip, and sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with this guy, the board. And this brings you to the end of World 1. What do you do from there? Well, at this point, you basically game over yourself, and the Mobius strip continues to world number 2. 18 months are over, time to roll the dice again and see what happens. This is, this is not far from the truth. This is basically what goes on. And when you're going into world number 2, you kind of wonder, like, how am I going to ever break this Mobius strip? Ever tried cutting a Mobius strip? See what happens? It becomes 2 Mobius strips. It gets longer and longer. It doesn't get disconnected. So while this is all going on, you really want to figure out what it takes to step away from this reactive infinite loop. To be able to do this effectively, you first need to understand relationships. You're basically dealing with 4 entities here. The board, who you're directly reporting to, who's going to pay you a salary and give you budgets. The regulators, well, because people make standards and standards breed regulators and regulators tighten things down around your neck. Then there's the IT vendors, of course, and your InfoSec crew. The best way to link all of these up is with a beautiful medieval diagram that I found. Is what actually really goes on. And I had to put happy faces on it, and the guy was naked, so I had to paint a suit on it and all that, but make the slide acceptable on stage. But yeah, you're at this point, you basically torn in all directions. Let's rewind the tape back to when you spent and bought all those InfoSec products. And this is what Thomas mentioned in this keynote, like why is there a market for InfoSec products? And basically, this happens when you view the whole world as risk reduction. You're basically buying blinking lights to reduce your risk. InfoSec products today have a fleeting shelf life. And when you go out and buy the products that you see in the next big expo, you're basically buying things that you're basically buying security debt. And this concept was best characterized by Weldpond, by Dan Geer, Gunnar Peterson, and Shah van der Walt. Whenever you accrue a product, you're basically paying for its future maintenance and when it fails. You're bringing on assets which you have to pay for. So recently I saw one happy thing on LinkedIn, which is a campaign called Say No to Another PO. Stop CISOs from buying random vendor crap, which is, it's a high time we really talk about decisions in purchasing InfoSec products. The problem why these products are not really effective is because, well, we said we're trying to solve a political problem by technology, and that really doesn't work. The other thing is we also need to understand the culture in the InfoSec shop. We've created a culture of toil, and this was best characterized by Dino Zovi in a few tweets he sent out in May, which I liked very much. And that kind of shows you that a culture of toil will never scale against a growing company today. You're fighting a battle with diminishing returns. And let's look at two ways of doing work. There's a geek way and the non-geek way. Both start manually. Eventually the geek figures out that this sucks, starts writing scripts. The manual guys make fun of the geek's method, saying, oh, this guy's not getting shit done. And then all of a sudden the scripts are ready. The geek goes forward. The manual guys are toiling. And you see where the lines go. So yes, the problem with toil is that it's actually addictive. You feel that you're doing real work, whereas you're actually just fighting forest fires. It's kind of ironic we mentioned forest fires right now in today's time. But yeah, if you're having your crew do work by toil, that's not going to scale in defending the enterprise. So with this, let me turn towards the learnings of three people that I respected the most. This is where my InfoSec journey actually began. I didn't really even know it. It began in 1998 when I joined Ernst & Young, and Kelly was my friend at that time working as a colleague. And through the years, we worked together for a long, long time in different roles and learned many things along the way. Anup Sethi, I met him in the first web hacking class that I taught in the year 2000, when the Twin Towers were still standing, and the class was in one of those Twin Towers. And he and another friend from Commerzbank were both in my first public web hacking class. And that time, web hacking was all mumbo jumbo. What do you mean inserting backticks and pipes and shit like that? It's all a web page, right? But yeah, that was the beginning of new dimensions. So I got introduced to Anup and Commerzbank in the same year, and through the years, I've worked as a vendor with all three. And they have all basically built great InfoSec teams, defended the enterprise successfully. So yes, there's a way out. Now, how do we go about doing it? So first comes Kelly's thesis, and his thesis is on what we call as the cybersecurity capabilities asymmetry. Big words. So let me break it down by Mario style. There's the camp that have everything in terms of capabilities, and there's the camp that are the have-nots. So what separates the two? The haves are capable. They're capable of their own custom analytics, threat intel, and response. They've got it going for themselves, by themselves. The have-nots have a culture of seeing cybersecurity as a necessary evil, while the haves have a culture of owning their own cybersecurity. They want to work on it. These guys want to push it under the rug. And the haves have all the talent. They've got the people to drive capabilities for themselves. And the have-nots are only dependent upon commercial solutions. They will never be able to create. But the whole idea is, how do you cross this asymmetric chasm? The whole point of the asymmetry is that, yeah, one side keeps growing and the other side keeps diminishing. But there is a way out. And the way out is, as suggested by Igor and Anup both, they believe in the capability of swarm intelligence. I'm using the word swarm, not using the word team. A team is a group of people who are really motivated and sharp, but a swarm has a life and a soul and an intelligence of its own. Dependence and coexistence is the only way the swarm can move ahead. But what happens with a swarm is like, it is fantastic when you see it in motion. It can do things which you will never be capable of. So how do you go about building swarm intelligence under your own roof? And this was suggested by, actually it's suggested by Igor. And I never really paid attention to things like Maslow's needs or things like that, because diagrams really bore me. This is the one concept which I really, really liked. It's, people think about evolution in terms of scaling up Maslow's pyramid of needs, but truly, that's not what evolution is. The evolution is to grow in human values, build a culture around values and what you hold core to your heart. And that concept was proposed by Clare Graves, and he unfortunately died before he could publish it in '86. And then this concept was later on published by his proteges, and this concept is called spiral dynamics. And I spent the last week reading up about spiral dynamics. I filled about like 20 pages in my notebooks just scribbling about it. And this is actually something fantastic. Spiral dynamics takes you through several stages of human evolution in terms of building up values. So you're really going from basic survival to power struggles to, there's dogmas and religious approaches to life, to being achievers, to being egalitarian. That's where you come to the green level. But the true breakthrough happens when you break the borders and boundaries of personal existence to an interpersonal and then a transpersonal existence. When you hit the stages above yellow to turquoise, the world is now holistic, experiential, and you've now achieved the hive mind. You're now truly running a swarm. So where does a leader fit in? The leader has to catalyze this whole process up the spiral. You want to build the hive mind. Once the swarm assembles, the swarm will learn and overcome any obstacle that you direct it to. And it'll solve it beautifully, better than you ever expected. So all you have to do as a leader is basically be a catalyst, be very mindful of where your team is in stages of spiral dynamics, and keep spinning the spiral up. Eventually, you have to be in charge of selecting the goals that are worth fighting for. And it's a decision. You want to trade your depth with breadth. You see the forest and not the trees. Let the team handle the depth. You keep the breadth and drive the strategy, and the swarm will do this. And I've seen this at work in all these three organizations. My view of spiral dynamics is more, I like to go with this diagram of mainly like quantum energy levels in an electron. You keep pushing the electrons to the orbits, you need more and more energy to get the electrons excited. And once you've reached the most exciting orbits, then comes the task of keeping the energy levels there. And this is where a lot of fractures happen. These spirals are nice, but maintaining the spiral at the topmost level requires a lot of energy. It's hard work to build up the energy levels and to go into the spiral, but it's also very easy to fall into the downward spiral trap. Electrons will deorbit like this. And one false move, and you're going to see the spiral go down. Once it goes down, it is actually a very, very slippery slope. And this is something that I've seen happen even with the best of InfoSec teams, the cascade effect. Things crumble, and they crumble in a geometric progression. It doesn't really take much to deorbit the whole stack. Again, it all hinges upon you as the InfoSec leader. What are the factors that are going to cause it to deorbit? So again, I turned to the experts and asked them, like, okay, what did you do? What did you do to keep this team going and keep the whole thing working? And here are the points and the lessons that I've learned, which are actually now the closest to my heart. The first is you need to be able to self-reflect. See yourself for who you are. Truthfully so. All your efforts in InfoSec are now going to be divided into two parts. One is, of course, building the InfoSec strategy. But the second and the most important thing, which you should never forget, is to protect the swarm. This protection business starts very, very early on. Eventually, you also have to empower the swarm. As you're taking them up to a collective, remember, you are not away from the collective. You are in that collective itself. And if that collective has a difference with you or you have a difference with the collective, it doesn't work. How do you bring the collective together is simply by empowerment. And lastly, if you really want to achieve full power of the hive mind, you must build really strong partnerships. I'm going to expand upon all these points in just a little bit. So first, let's talk about reflections and what it takes to analyze yourself. There's two sides, right? What type of a leader are you? And you got to be very truthful when you see your own reflection in the mirror. Who are you? Are you an authoritative person? Or are you a catalyst? Do you listen? Do you push back to the business? Do you resist the forces? Do you always have a sky is falling attitude? So, first thing, you've got to make this decision. Which properties do you want to work upon in terms of turning them around? And which properties do you want to work upon and grow them, what you have? Without this, there is no next step. The second and the most important thing is, yes, we talked about swarms and swarm intelligence, but let's really define the core DNA of our swarm. What is our swarm doing? What is your InfoSec team doing? What's the motto of your InfoSec team? So Anoop's view is you view your InfoSec team as a center of excellence for all technical security. This is what you're really building. This is the core guts of it. This is what your team members are communicated and they're working towards this purpose. You want to be the oracle that can help everyone in the organization. Eventually, your capabilities are such that people will come to you for a solution, by you, the swarm, and the swarm will help out anyone and everyone in the best and the most efficient way possible. And this creates incredible value. Value that your organization will initially want to profit from. This is also a very dangerous thing when you build up a really, really competent company, and this is what British Telecom ended up facing. British Telecom's InfoSec is twofold. They have internal InfoSec, and they also do consulting for others. So the board started seeing their team as, hey, look, these guys are really sharp. Let's just sell them out to other companies. But then you have the problem of, depleting your own resources and working upon others because it makes short-term profit. So there you've got to be really, really careful and creative to not let that happen. But eventually you have to run this whole show as an independent consultancy within the organization. This is what its true nature should be. Independent, which means no interference, and it's consultative in nature. How do you take care of the swarm? And this is where your initial battle is going to start. Because let's face it, boards understand only one language. The bottom line is the top line. And that's fine. We don't want to push back upon that. First thing, let them be who they are. That's okay. Within these constraints, how do you grow your InfoSec team? Because it's going to take time to demonstrate benefits. You can't have benefits instantly. You have all the other four forces tugging at you, and that's not going to stop. You're not going to get a breather. So one of the first things you're going to need to do is figure out how to creatively insulate your team from all the forces. Don't make your swarm part of the medieval problem, because that's going to fracture it very, very quickly. You'll have to let it grow from the personal stage to the transpersonal stages, and while that happens, you got to make sure they're insulated. And the only way you can do it is by absolute honesty and openness. If you're not honest with your teams, there is no trust. There is no hive mind happening there. You've got to take this decision very early on. You have to be honest. There's no such thing as selective honesty. Full on or nothing. Once you have that and you've earned the team's trust, you've got to make sure that it stays there. One of the biggest detractors to the trust is when you're going to be faced with a crisis. And you all know it. Ours is a very dangerous game. Mistakes happen. And sometimes big mistakes happen. It's not like, okay, we can, wipe it away. Things will affect people. Production will break. Your entire East Coast cloud center is going to go kaput. This is okay. This will happen. At this time, it is most important to maintain full honesty and integrity towards both. You will be caught in fire. If you take the easy way out, throw a team member under the bus, blame it on them, and let them sell them down the river. You do that, that's the end of it. Downward spiral happens instantly, your swarm's broken, and you've really reached the end. Don't ever throw your team members under the bus. In fact, you've got to own it up. You'll have to face the music. The only message that goes out to your team is it's okay to make mistakes. And these are Anoop's words. Make mistakes. Make many mistakes. Make new mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. But don't ever bloody make the same mistake again. New ones are okay. Repeating old mistakes, not okay. So yeah, there's got to be some semblance of checks and balances. There can be no blank check though. So you've got to keep that bit in mind. That being said, there's also a very important lesson in protecting the swarm, is as your swarm is young and growing, or even when it's not young and still mature, you got to beware of bad apples. And the only response to bad apples is throw them out instantly. There's no place. The more you let bad apples persist, you will end up in this tweet, which I like very much, the blockchain of toxic. You get two toxic friends, that's it. The blockchain's established, and there you go. It's done. The next point was about empowering your swarm. You basically have to enable your folks to call bullshit on you. Otherwise, the emperor has no clothes and life's okay. InfoSec teams can really let you live in illusions, and until one fine day you look in the mirror, this happens. But be honest with yourself and let people call you out on it. Now, I don't know how you'll enable this in your organization, but you have everything from lunches, drinks, hanging out together, stand-ups. The best form of empowerment I've seen is when you let the swarm make solid partnerships with vendors. And I've been fortunate to be a partner to 3 of these big swarms for a very long time, and some of them still continuing. Partnerships are great, and this is what the CISO that I used to be a vendor to, Shah, who is actually not the CISO of CRISIL anymore. He is the president of NetSquare. He left his company and joined us to lead the group. His words to me were that, you must surround yourself with smart people and surround yourself with small teams because they are most agile and learn from them. Let your team members cross-pollinate with the knowledge that they're going to bring. And 2 shining examples I've seen. One of them is British Telecom's own InfoSec conference called SnoopCon, which is invite only. I believe it's now in its 8th year and has about 150 people attending, internal folks and vendors, and it's a fantastic event. And the other is Commerzbank's Voodoo, and they do this in December in Glashutten. And they've also got a really sharp crew coming year after year after year. And this is how they keep the partnerships built, the swarms cross-pollinated. And when you do this, the big vacuum and the big dilemma that other InfoSec leaders is like, where do I get people from? You do all this, they'll come to you. You don't have to go looking. BT doesn't hire any headhunters. People come straight to them. They'll want to join your swarm even though it pays only half of what the industry average pays. Because eventually a culture of freedom, fraternity, empowerment, innovation will outweigh any paycheck that you can get. People stick together because they like working with one another on creative challenges. So this kind of brings me to the most important question. What really is the CISO's dilemma? And this is a question that you must answer before you begin your journey as a CISO or as you're taking the first step as a CISO. Absolutely early on in your career. Whose side are you on? Without this question, this whole talk is meaningless. Whose side are you on? Are you on your own side or are you on your team's side? There are 2 stories here. If you're on your own side, that's a good story. You're going to go upwards in personal growth. Pay packages are handsome. That's all great. You will be able to keep your technical depth. You certainly grow. You definitely run the risk of being trapped in the Mobius loop. If you're happy with it, that's fine. Super Mario, right? You can always keep going from world 1 to world 8 and then you're 60 and you're done. Or you can choose the team's side. Initially, it's a painful thing because you have to let go of your persona. You have to let go of your own technical depth. But you maintain your technical expertise. And you're then working on building the spiral. You do this, you're going to stand on the shoulders of giants, and they're going to take you to heights which you will never have expected to reach. And you'll get that joy. And this is the joy I've seen on all these 3 leaders, that the joy of growing and building a superb team, and even beautifully so, letting it continue even after they've left and they've moved on. And that is the hardest step, because once you leave, where is your next step? Who's going to carry it forward? So it's also a part of your learning process. So with this, for now, if you're not into the whole spiral dynamics thing, I can promise you one thing. A time will come where you're going to be put in a very tight spot. And you're going to be all alone and there's no way out. And at this point, you've got to do what Khrushchev did. So I don't know if this is legend or not, but after Brezhnev succeeded Khrushchev, the old man told him that, look, one day you're going to find yourself in a shitty situation. There are 2 letters that I've written for you. You open them, you'll find the answers. So Brezhnev eventually does open one of the letters during the height of the Cold War. and when he's facing real problems. So the first letter said, blame it all on me, blame it all on Saumil Shah, blame it on someone, blame it on your predecessor. And it works like a champ. It'll get you going. Blame it on the old man. But then you're going to run into this again. So Brezhnev opens the second letter, and that says, well, write 2 more letters. So basically, yeah, this, by the way, is not the grug. So with this, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you for your time and attention. I believe we have 9 minutes for any questions and answers or whatever thoughts you may have this morning.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Saumil. Any questions from the floor, live from the floor, before we move on to the questions on the Slido app?
Rahul.
Of course, hang on.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, I was impressed by the BT thing, but I have one comment to give you, but because I'm European, as you know. So, for example, BT Italy, they call private companies in order to make tenders, invitation only, in order to sell pen tests to someone, which is like, it's a punch with what you say, but I think that this happens in all the huge organizations, and in Europe, maybe we are slower, or I would even say more idiots, in trying to approach everything that you explained, because Europeans are not humble as Asian people. What's your answer or your thought?
There's no answer to Rahul Chiesa. That is something I've learned in all these years. And honestly, I have no answer here. I don't know. Maybe over the bar, we will evolve some answers out of it.
I think that one, it isn't an answer, but a keyword, and then I will get back to MiG-20. It's culture. It's about culture.
Oh, yes.
Because everything that you say that I really enjoyed so much, if the CISO is not able, alone to being humble, and everything you said to hack himself into his brain and being humble again and understanding the cultures of the continents, at least, he can't do anything.
Oh, yeah. So absolutely, it's all about the culture. There's no 2 words about it at all. You must know your organization, you must know your business very well, and form strong relationships with both. Without this, there is no way forward. Cool. Anybody else? Bug me. You have 7 minutes. Mark, Stefano, Katie, come on. Sorry for not joining you last evening. This was going on till 4 a.m.
Indeed. Well, in the meantime, while we wait for more questions from the floor, maybe we'll take a look at the questions set on the...
Sure, go ahead.
Seems like the most voted one we have right now. There are 2 highest voted ones. Your choice, Saumil?
As a CISO, is it important to have an offensive security or a defensive security background? Is one more advantageous than another? You know what? I'm going to answer this straight away by saying just focus on the culture. Just focus. Everything works. You'll need both. I am both and I am neither. My entire background has been in breaking stuff. I've never really built anything in my life. But both offensive or defensive, eventually it's the swarm or you're in that reactive infosec loop. Second question, how do we apply spiral dynamics to demonstrate values to stakeholders who are more, damn, it moved and turned blue. I can only see high, medium, and low blue color. All right. So how do you demonstrate value to stakeholders who are very focused? So this, basically, by creating a swarm, you're empowering the consultancy organization within your company. And that's what's going to drive the most value. Whatever you set the tasks to, the swarm's going to achieve them. Today, not only is the InfoSec team just, defending the company, but they're also advising their own business units on what it takes to bring InfoSec from the design upwards, working with vendors, you will end up demonstrating results early on. I'm going to give you the story of Zions Bank. They built their own threat analytics engine out of a few unused computers and ran a Hadoop cluster on it. The total cost was about $85,000 to $100,000. Like, two guys sat and built this because they were getting hit by a lot of phishing campaigns. So they say, let's just ingest all the data and see, can we look at some HTTP headers and HTTP traffic and correlations by seeing like whether our images are going to getting pulled out or being directly linked for phishing campaigns. And this paid them a lot of early dividends. They were able to stop a lot of phishing campaigns to their customers. Eventually, they took this and started analyzing all the HTTP traffic for 8 to 9 years. And they rolled out their own fraud modeling. They had a platform called Catwalk where different fraud models would walk through, and they wrote everything in R. They were able to stop a lot of fraud and demonstrate effectiveness straight away in savings. Because money saved is money earned. You show a savings of about $3.5 million prevented in fraud directly within the first year. Nobody's going to ask you if you ask for another 200K for building that Hadoop cluster. It's like, shut up and take my money. At that point, metrics, KPIs will be a done deal. Demonstrate results early, demonstrate them often. Yes, Mark.
I'm not sure I 100% agree with you on that, and I'll phrase it as a question.
Sure.
One of the challenges when you are succeeding as a security leader is that often the company won't see anything.
That's right.
They'll see you being really, really busy, and they'll see your teams building a lot of stuff, but no bad things happen, and they don't see anything that kind of gives them an impression that something's happened. How would you go about communicating good news upwards? KPIs is the language that boards talk, so that they know that you're actually delivering value.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important thing. At some point, if you really find yourself in a situation which you're very orthogonal, like the bigwigs just don't listen to you, then that's a problem which is still not solved. Most solutions end up being walking away. But maybe I'm going to ask you the same question in tomorrow's keynote.
Deal.
Answers by reflection. Do you feel there is a future in open source products? Oh, yes, there is a big future. I wanted to mention one cool thing. Have you heard of Facebook's OS Query? It's a brilliant piece of open source software that initially they wrote for their own selves. And my Facebook at the time had several diverse technical platforms, and they wanted to answer things like, can we find a malicious calculator that's running on any computer in our whole enterprise? So can we query processes just like doing a query in a SQL table? And they wrote OS Query, which they've open sourced, and they had a lot of fun building and maintaining it. In fact, this is going to be a key to even growing and retaining your team. Build your own, open source it, let others contribute to it, let it grow. I would go for it.
Saumil,
yes.
The next question on Slido. Maybe any questions from live audience? Great. Hang on.
Stefano, yes.
So I was wondering about this while you were talking about the difficulties and a way to just jump ahead by building this swarm concept.
Yeah.
In the US, a number of people are starting to wonder if it would be a good idea to strip out the compliance role from the CISO role and just have somebody that does the compliance part, regulatory part, privacy part, and somebody that actually does what you said, the actual CISO. Do you think that that's a wise idea, unwise idea? Because I am kind of divided on that. I would like to hear your opinion.
Absolutely. I want to go back to my old keynote that I did, and this is basically what I mentioned. Where do we go? Give me one sec. Yeah, may I have the slides, please? Thanks. Yeah, basically the CISO role had forked from InfoSec, from CIO role, but So if you look at the CISO's daily job functions, it's this stuff. This is all from at keynotes. And you look at the fact that 90% of your time is going to be sucked into compliance. And it is, basically at this point you have to say, this is not my circus, not my monkeys. You essentially hive off the whole job of compliance to somebody else, stick him with a sack, and you move on to what you want to do best, is defend against attackers. The compliance officer defends against the auditors. You need time to create thoughts and teams for defense. You get stuck in compliance, good luck. Right. We bring this to a close?
Yeah, I think that wraps up the time we have.
Questions shall be answered at after parties and wherever you can find me. That's where you'll get real answers.
Yeah, as always, feel free to reach out to Saumil off stage as well. Thank you very much, Saumil.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and attention.